Hello everyone and a very good morning. Distinguished delegates, presenters and participants from the SARC member states and other regions around the globe. It gives me a great pleasure to extend you all a very welcome on behalf of the SARC Energy Center. I'm very thankful to all of you for joining us in this webinar on techniques to forecast long-term demand of electricity for SARC member states. I'm Dr. Tanveer Ahmed, and I am working at the SARC Energy Center as Program Leader Technology Transfer. I shall be moderating today's webinar. Ladies and gentlemen, we have Dr. Nawaz Ahmed, the Director SEC here, and I would like to invite him for the opening remarks. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Dr. Tanveer, for this today's webinar. Dear participants and presenters of the webinar, very good morning, everyone. I welcome you all to this webinar on techniques to forecast long-term demand of electricity for SARC member states. Long-term power system planning is a prerequisite to optimize the investment in the power sector, as well as ensure efficient utilization of energy sources. Demand forecasts for the long term provide a roadmap for the future and play an important role in economic expansion of the power system to meet the future demand reliably while maintaining power quality. In the SARC region, coordinated system planning can help all the member states to exploit the maximum potential of their energy resources, rapidly increase the integration of renewable energy, and enhance energy security. Dear participants, SARC Energy Center is a regional institute on energy and a technical arm for the SARC organization on regional energy matters and associated fields. It is our endeavor to enhance regional capacity in the energy sector development and management for the betterment of the people of South Asia. Dear participants, South Asia is one of the fastest growing regions in the world. This economic development combined with population growth, urbanization and industrialization has led to increased demand for energy and especially the electricity. As a result, the electricity sector in the SARC countries has grown rapidly. Recognizing the importance and scope of long-term demand of electricity, SEC is conducting this webinar on techniques to forecast long-term demand of electricity for SARC member states. The objective of this webinar is to discuss various models and methods used for long-term power demand forecasting and ways to minimize the inherent inaccuracies in the forecasting methods, along with the impacts on power system expansion. Dear participants, in this webinar, we have experts from FAST National University, Pakistan, the Celestial Earth, India, and NASA College of Engineering, Qasim University, Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. They will share the knowledge and experience through presentations and interactive discussions. I'm delighted to acknowledge the great cooperation and support extended by all of them. In the end, I once again thank you all for joining this webinar. Please feel free in expressing your opinions and suggestions regarding this webinar. With these words, I declare the session open and wish you all a very comfortable learning and knowledge sharing experience. Now I request again Dr. Tanveer Ahmed to take us through the agenda. Thank you all again for your time and participation.
Thank you so much, sir, for your time and for being here with us today. Dear participant, you will have the opportunity to ask questions to presenters by typing your questions or clicking to the raise hand option into the attendees pane of the main window of GoToWebinar software. You may send in your questions at any time during the presentations. We will collect these and address them during the Q&A session at the end of each presentation. Additionally, we will have a chance to share your views in the knowledge sharing session of the webinar. Ladies and gentlemen, let's move to the technical session and start with formal presentation. Our first presenter is Dr. Muhammad Tariq, who is an associate professor at the Department of Electrical Engineering at National University of Computer and Emerging Sciences, FAST, Peshawar. Dr. Tariq is a Fulbright postdoctoral fellow of the U.S. Department of State's at Princeton University. He has co-authored a book on smart grids with leading researchers, including a Nobel laureate, published by John Wiley and Sons in April 2015. He is the author of 40 plus research papers, including book chapters, high impact journals, and conferences. He has also won many international awards and grants. Over to you, Dr. Tariq. Dr. Tariq, can you please unmute yourself and start?
Thank you, Dr. Tanveer. Thank you for a very nice introduction. Can you hear me now? Am I audible?
Clear.
Okay, thank you so much. Thank you for inviting me for this very important webinar. It's an honor for me to present in front of this August audiences. Okay, before my topic is about it is very much related to the webinar also. So I will be discussing about forecasting, and then in detail about load forecasting, then different type of forecasting, and then finally I would move toward the long-term load forecasting in from the perspective of SAARC countries, and why we need that in the long run, why it's very important from the SAARC perspective. So if we are talking about forecasting, so let's see the the perspective about forecasting about how it is important, and along with that how difficult it is. Let me quote Neil Bohr. He said, and I quote about forecasting. He said, "Prediction is very difficult, especially if it's about the future." So that's a Nobel laureate said about forecasting. So having said that, let's discuss what is the forecasting process and how it works. It is basically the process of making prediction of the future based on the past and present data. So the more accurate our forecasting will be if you provide meaningful information, and those information can be present as well as data that is collected. History is not a perfect predictor of the future. There is no such thing as a perfect forecast. And let me say a very bold statement. Forecasts are always wrong, and there is no substitute for the calculated demand. So there will always be a difference between the actual and forecasted value. So for that, how difference is there between actual and forecasted value? We need to have estimation parameters like mean square error, MAP or mean average percentage error, mean absolute deviation are made, through which we can determine how much difference is there between the actual as well as forecasted value. So what should we consider while looking into the past and present values? And this is exactly what we call data sciences in nowadays. So we have to check among the data that we collected, the trends, which trend it is followed, whether it's a linear, non-linear. Also, we have to find out the seasonality, like whether it is change season from one time to other time. Is there any relationship, like if the sinusoidal waves are there is some cyclic elements involved, or we also have to find out what is the relationship of current data with the previous data, and the data elements among the data elements in the form of autocorrelation, and also if there is any variation that occurs and which is random. So all that conclude in the more accurately you find out that relationship, the more accurately you can do the forecasting. So now let's come to the load forecast. It is basically a technique which is used in power system by the power companies and utilities companies to predict the power or energy that is needed to balance the supply and demand. In other words, to have an optimum relationship between the demand and response, because both under estimation and overestimation are under forecasting, and over forecasting may not serve the purpose. It is normally divided into uh, uh, broad three classes, like short-term load forecasting, medium-term load forecasting, and long-term load forecasting. So uh, it is generally said that the shorter the duration, the more accurate will be the forecast. So in other words, we can say that short-term load forecasting are the techniques that are used for short-term load forecasting. The results are comparatively much accurate as compared to the long-term forecast. So the ability of to forecast the long-term demand of electricity is basically a basic or fundamental prerequisite for the development of a secure and economic power system. And it depends on many factors, and those number of socio-economic factors such as economic growth of a country, of a region, industrial production in the form of CO2 emission, if we tie it to the hydrocarbon emission, and at the same time economic growth we tie it to GDP or gross domestic product growth. New technological development, new technologies are incorporated into the system. So considering these independent variables or factors, if we incorporate and determine the forecast, how accurate it will be, we will see later on. Why, in first place, why load forecasting? So to be very precise, we need to optimally utilize our generation resources. At the same time, capacity and network planning to optimally or efficiently utilize the financial resources, and to efficiently do financial planning, uh, efficient power procurement, sell of excess power if we have. In the SAARC region, there are still some countries who have excess of power. If I can give example of Bhutan and Nepal, their hydro generation capacity is much more than any other country in the region. So they, if properly forecasted and utilized, so it can be in the form of supergrid, can be utilized in the regional countries in the form of a SAARC platform. Okay, and the main objective of load forecasting is to ensure the availability of supply of electricity, and that is if it is long-term planning, like if we have energy generation through the hydropower, it is long-term, but and initially more investment is required, but it's very cheaper option. And however expensive option that what we are having right now, and that create a problem for us in Pakistan as well. If that was properly what was initially the Basha Diamar dam, which was planned initially and based on the forecast demand that Pakistan will have in the next 2 decades, if it was planned properly, there we would not be dependent on IPPs right now. And the problem with that IPPs that we are having, it's immediate. The generation is immediate, but it's very expensive, and at the same time, it is not environmental friendly. And the situation right now that somehow in some situation we are generating surplus energy, which is sometime in winter is not required. So this is how, if the forecasting was done in a proper way, and proper tool were used, and all the socioeconomic factors that were incorporated, so uh, we could do much better and could optimally utilize our available resources, energy generation resources. So we can say that unnecessary capital expenditure are, if we say that, or uh, forecasting can sometime lead to a situation where you have to use too costly installation, and which is later on very expensive to run, as I mentioned about IPPs earlier. What is the most difficult thing in forecasting? And obviously, it is uncertainties. There are different factors they can contribute, and on the basis of which forecast may not be accurate. These are like project are sometimes they are large, and sometimes it requires a lot of time. Uncertainties like unavoidable circumstances, like we were not once in a centuries we have a pandemic like what we have right now, the COVID-19, and what forecasting was done a few years back, they did not incorporate the pandemic and how economically it affected. Who would have thought that India economy will shrink 25%, will shrink down? That was not expected, but that what happened. Majority of the country, their GDP, their economy got negative. So these are the factors which is sometimes very difficult to incorporate in the forecasting, and as a result, the outcome or the accuracy may not as high as expected. Now let's come to the timeline of load forecasting. There are, as I said earlier, they are divided into three different type of load forecasting. That is long-term load forecasting, medium-term load forecasting, and short-term load forecasting. So the yearly, in terms from hours to weeks, it is considered the forecasting, which is for hours or up to a week. It is categorized as short-term load forecasting. While beyond 1 week, like from 2 weeks up to 3 years, this kind of forecasting is medium-term load forecasting. And beyond, it is like there is a gray line between the load medium and long-term. Sometimes they are interconnected and they are considered as one. So from 1, 3 up to few decades, and so few others they quote it is like up to 20 years, but normally it's up to a few decades as well. So it is it is categorized in the and long-term load forecasting. So these three are used for different purposes. If we take short-term load forecasting, it is used for anomaly detection, for contingency analysis, and also for power quality disturbances forecasting. Though again, its uncertainties are always involved there, but accuracy is comparatively much better as that of medium-term load forecasting and long-term load forecasting. For medium-term load forecasting is like for next season. For example, summer is coming in Pakistan. Here, the scenario is the demand in summer in countries like Pakistan, India, and Bangladesh is much higher because of the overall the consumption due to the high temperature, and also the economic activities during the summer. So the requirement is the demand is much higher as compared to the winter. So this kind of forecasting done for this purpose for a single season, it is done through the medium-term load forecasting and the techniques that are being used. And then long-term load forecasting, for example, what will be the scenario in future, like in 2025, in 2025 or say 2050, what will be the energy demands, or particularly electricity demands, considering that electric vehicles, as predicted and as forecasted, that majority or higher percentage of electric cars will be there. So the system will be more dependent on electricity generation. So we will see just like we have petrol stations. So in future, everywhere we will see the electric charging stations. So for that, we will definitely need electricity, and we have to plan accordingly in different factors. So economic planning for new generation capacity must start now, and how the energy will be generated and utilized should be considered in the long-term load forecasting. So this is the scenario that how short-term load forecasting is done. You have previous data, you have real-time data, and then you consider different exogenous variables, which is not directly in this causal system, like some variables they contributed from outside. So they incorporated in on the basis of that short-term load forecasting is done for hourly data, data for 1 day, for a week, etc. So what are different techniques that are used, and which techniques are better in this scenario? So there is another question that audience may ask. Oh, let's first discuss those techniques. The most common one techniques are called time series analysis. Most common techniques among them are autoregressive or AR, autoregressive moving average, etc. These are different types, so which is time series based. Some of them are weighted autoregressive moving average techniques, and then trends are involved there, like if we incorporate trend in it, and other exponential signaling and trend signaling, if we incorporate that, so we can predict and we can forecast in short-term load forecasting. Then multiple linear regression. In this kind of regression, we use multiple independent variables which can which are contribute to the overall output, or in the form of independent variable. Then recently are the techniques that my people in my research group are different researchers nowadays working on, to use artificial intelligence such as expert system in the form of machine learning, neural network, fuzzy logic, and nowadays deep learning. If the data size is bigger, if for example if we have more data about what happened in last 10, 20, 30 years in detailed information, so on the basis of that, if we apply the deep learning technique like ANN, CNN, and reinforcement learning techniques. So on the basis of the most recent one is federated learning technique, which is for distributed energy generation. If we involve that distributed renewable energy system, so we can get more accurate result. So the future is there of that of AI system, our expert learning based system. If we incorporate that and apply on the system, and the basis of that, we can do much better forecast. In long term, which is the main topic of this webinar, the scenario is almost same, but the duration is, and at the same time, exogenous variables are different, are external variables which can contribute to the overall forecasting. The more variables, the more factors that are the more relevant factor that if you include in your forecasting techniques, so you can do much better forecast. So it is for a year to 3 years and up to few decades. For example, right now, if we are asked to what will be the energy demand of Pakistan or India or Bangladesh or whatever SAARC region we are having, so almost the trend is same. We are almost economically, in terms of maybe the GDP of Bangladesh and India is much better. So if we forecast, it will be better in country like Afghanistan as well. So you have to consider the GDP, you have to consider the telecom infrastructure, you have to consider the CO2 emission or industry that is involved, plus the EV policy, because the country which are more friendly toward EV, so there will be more electric EV or electric vehicles will be there. We will see in the roads, the majority of the car will be hybrid or pure electric vehicles, and in the decade to come. So for that, which forecasting technique will be better? So some of the models that we are discussing here is trend analysis, linear multivariable regression, end use and econometric approaches, which are based on independent variables or factors such as GDP growth, industrial goods, telecom infrastructure, CO2 emission, etc. And another technique is partial end use method. What we mean by end use and partial end use method, we will differentiate between them in a while. And then scenario based approach, if we consider different scenarios in what will be the outcome. So trend analysis, the first long-term load forecasting technique, are the technique based on trend analysis. Those methods are widely used as tool for forecasting, which works as, on are with the historical data in order to extrapolate past load growth pattern into the future. So trending techniques involve fitting trend curves to some basic historical data adjusted to reflect the growth trend in itself. Let's say electric vehicles are the percentage is growing like in linearly. It is was like 1% 5 years back. Now 10 years back, in 5 years back it was 2%. Now 4%, and so on. So that is the trend that you have to identify. Then the trend can be linear, it can be non-linear. If there is some policy, suddenly the government policy changes, so in that case the trend will not be linear, and then you have to use some other mechanism in the form of non-linear trend, or which we call it quadratic. Similarly, exponential trend or growth, which we see that if last year it was 2%, this year it can be 4%, and next year it can be 16%, and so on. So cumulative average growth rate, so another trend analysis technique that can be used. So let's discuss this one by one. The first, the trend is, your next one is multivariable regressions. Let's say that this is the econometric method which determine energy demand by considering the influence of independent variables. As I said earlier, these independent variables can be population, it can be the income of a country, of a region, it can be the economic growth over the years, and it can, those independent variables or factors can also be cost, and also the industry installation, if the policy of a country or the future that we have to rely on domestic production. So definitely industry will grow, so that will also should be involved as an independent variable in order to find out that what will be the load forecast for that in the next decade or two. Similarly, GDP for registered manufacturing sector, and etc. etc. Next method of long term load forecast is partial end use. End use is like the user direct involvement of utilization, such as the appliances that are used and the number of appliances used in a country, in a region, in a city, and which type of, and also it depends on the class. In villages, the utilization of electric appliances is different in that of the city, and in city, if you take the trend and the posh areas, we say Beria town, or in Islamabad in different sectors. Similarly, in Peshawar, I'm sitting right now in Hayatabad. So the trend is different. So this is what we call the direct end use approach, that how they utilize in 24 hours and in 1 week or 1 year. And then something like partial, which is not fully end use approach, where uh, non-industrial bulk consumer like research establishment, etc., peer involvement is. So for that, we use the combination of end use technique as well as trend analysis. So the combination of this is called as partial end use technique. Next is scenario-based approach for long-term forecasting. If you consider like different scenarios, suppose you consider that a country or a particular country announced that they will have their own electric vehicles in only.
Your screen is, can you refresh it, please? We are still looking at the multivariable regression slide.
Can you see my screen now?
We are still looking at the multivariable regression slide.
Okay. Can you see my screen now?
It's still the same slide.
Okay, let me disconnect it and
Yeah, disconnect your screen sharing and reshare it again.
Is it the same slide?
No, please share your screen. We cannot see your screen right now. How can you do it from here?
Yes.
Yeah, now
Can
we can.
you? Okay. Okay, sorry for the disturbance. Let's start here. So I was on scenario approach, where different scenarios are considered in order to forecast. So like scenario can be the policies of individual countries, they consider it while uh, forecasting in the future. So as I mentioned about electric vehicle, and also policy as well as industrial policy, economic policy, so all contribute to the overall forecasting. So we need to consider and the more relevant independent variables or factors that we will consider in scenario, the better we can get the results. Now let's summarize it. Journal load forecasting techniques. So in journal, there are five type of forecasting techniques. They are subjective, univariate, multivariate, and use an econometric approach in combination of all of them. So when we say uh, subjective, so by subjective mean it is individual opinion on the base of individual judgment, intuition, commercial knowledge, and past experience. Forecaster may or may not take the past information into consideration. So sometimes this is the accuracy is not that high in this situation. Then univariate its approach, which is entirely based on past observation, and such as techniques like Jenkins techniques. We use, as I mentioned earlier, AR, MA, AR, IMA. These are all univariate approaches. Multivariate approaches, it is like as previously I discussed about econometric approaches, where we have multiple independent variables, and there is single dependent variable. So combinedly, this approach is called as multivariate. So these approach sometimes are called as causal or prediction models. Then econometric approaches, which is show the econometric approaches such as that that the variables that I discussed, like economic growth, GDP, CO2 emission, uh, telecom infrastructure, all those parameters, when they are combined in order to find out the output in the form of dependent variables. And finally, end-use approach. End-use approach I discussed earlier, like the end user, the description of the appliances used by the customer, the size of the houses, the community, the age of the equipment, the technology that is being used. So all the output based on those data, and the final output got from using some statistical technique or simulation model. So that is called directly, and pivot it is called as end use approach, while partial end, which and where we combine the trend as well as the end use approach. So this is called as hybrid. So if we combine econometric technique, multivariate, univariate, as well as uh, subjective, so combinedly it is you can use multiple combination of the technique, and we call it as hybrid techniques. So if we summarize that, the factors that are affecting the long-term load forecasting are the GDP growth, historical data, population growth. uh, this region is one of the fastest in terms of the population growth, and also the telecom infrastructure is also growing very rapidly. Even recently we had a successful installation through Hawaii, the 5G, and we can expect 6G also in this region. Even in Afghanistan, the 4G is are already there, and particularly the trend of renewable energy resources and its utilization. If we take it solar, the main hurdle was the prices, and now it is greater lower day by day. So we can expect in the future that per unit cost will be much lower. So its involvement or it's integrated with the national grid will also affect the overall long-term load forecasting. Here you see the GDP growth uh, of different countries, and due to the pandemic last year, you see the sudden difference between the GDP growth of these South Asian countries in 2019 and 2020. So this is what uncertainties can contribute to the GDP and which can overall impact the long-term load forecasting as well. So these things which are sometimes not possible to integrate in your models, so which can contribute to the overall the output or the accuracy of the forecasting model. So let me conclude my presentation here. History is not a perfect predictor of the future. That is, there is no such thing as a perfect forecast. So, and as I said earlier, the forecast will always be wrong. There is no silver bullet, but by wrong we mean there is no ideal situation. There will always be an error. So we have to find out the lower that estimation error is, the better will be our forecast. And the most relevant information that we used in the forecasting, and the most relevant and dependent variable that we use in our forecasting model, the better will be our the forecast about the load of particular country. And also, is the longer we is known that the duration is longer, the accuracy will not be that high. So for to avoid overestimation and underestimation, we have to choose a particular technique, and it depends on the information that you have. So the key here is to choose a right technique for the right kind of forecasting. So with this, I'm going to conclude my presentation. This is just last year output that I want to share with you all, that we also did work based on load forecasting and also instability that is involved, in which overall impact our power system and also which contribute to the outages as well. So this is the work that I'm still my research group we are doing, and also we are collaborating with the Princeton universities on different real-time funding project of National Science Foundation of the United States. Thank you all. Thank you for your patience. And if you have any question, I would like to answer. Thank you very, very much.
Thank you, Dr. Tariq. We would have some discussion and question and answer session. It was a very thoughtful and deep presentation. So, sir, let's start if you would like to say something.
Thank you, Dr. Saab. A very comprehensive presentation, very knowledgeable presentation. You touched very important, sector of energy planning, which is just not the load management in the power sector, but overall, it is an important area for energy planning at country level and regional level as well. I want to discuss with you a few points for enhancing our understanding. You touched upon the short-term, medium-term, and long-term load forecasting. From my understanding, you showed that it is financial planning and tariff formulation in medium-term load forecasting that enables us for these two factors like financial planning and tariff formulation. What's your take? Is it also not part of long-term planning, or that we are better able to financial plan in the long term? Let's say we are going to build some energy infrastructure in the long term. So between medium term and long term planning, how the financial planning is relevant for the medium term versus the long term?
Thank you very much, sir. I was expecting this question. So you rightly pointed out the difference. Yes, if you can, if I go back to the slide, I mentioned that sometimes they are the medium term and long terms are used together. The reason is some researcher when we discuss the timeline, so they say that the medium term load forecasting is from from a week, 2 weeks to up to 1 year, some say up to 3 years, and they start like long-term planning from 3 years, some start from 1 year. So there is some gray area, and at the same time they use these techniques, particularly long-term load forecasting technique for medium-term load forecasting as well. Let me give an example. uh, Medium term we say 1 year. So the overall energy utilization of Pakistan next year from January to December. So the technique that we are using, so we also have to consider all those independent parameters, or we say variables, and this same if we do for long term load forecasting, so we may use that as well. But if we for medium term, the policy involvement may not be there because the duration is that longer. But for example, EV policy, electric vehicle policy, we hear that very soon in 6 year to 1 year, as per the minister, he said that the prices will come down. The reason government is going to give more, they already give some incentive, and they are going to give more incentives. There will be less taxes or even no taxes on, so that to develop or to promote the electric vehicle industry, and they are inviting. But there is policy and strategies involved, and policy making, it takes a long time. So if you consider that factor in medium term, it may not work. But if you consider that in the long term load forecasting, definitely it will work, and it will the overall accuracy will be better in that scenario. So this is just an example you can take it. I hope I gave the answer.
Thank you. One more, point to discuss. Load forecasting in the electricity sector is part of the energy demand forecasting. So we are talking here about the load forecasting in electricity sector, power sector, and it is, what I understand, is it part of overall energy demand forecasting. So we have to do overall energy demand forecasting, and part of that will be logically, theoretically, the demand load forecasting in the power sector. Is it so?
Yes, it is exactly. It is true, because all the energy resources are, because we say energy here. Mostly we are, hydrocarbons are involved. So in Pakistan, hydrocarbons are not only used for in transportation sector or oil industry, but it is also used to generate electricity. So it is also one of the factor, because if we see the overall generation of Pakistan, current generation, so there is huge contribution of hydrocarbons, or the energy generation through those hydrocarbons, or petroleum and LNG, etc. So that is when we are going to do planning, so not just for electricity but for overall energy, because that electricity around, if I'm not wrong, it is around 45%. Here most of the people are from energy area, so they know better than me. So the generation through hydrocarbon is around 45%. So you can relate that the energy plus electricity as well.
Okay, one last point as a key takeaway message from your talk. Let's say energy demand forecasting is a huge task, and to achieve at some forecasting, a good guess for forecasting, energy forecasting. There are multiple variables. Let's say if we are planning an electricity forecasting is part of energy demand forecasting. Alternate energy fuels play a role. Let's say if we use electricity and heating, and if there is alternate fuel source, let's say gas is available at cheaper price, then it do affect the electricity demands in the winter, likewise in the summer as well. So it is a complex, multi-variable kind of approach. Then there is also economic metric approach, including the economic development, economic indicators, and of course hybrid, combining econometric as well as scenario analysis. So what we can have end message from your talk. What is the most reliable, approach of energy demand forecasting between scenario analysis, econometric approach, or hybrid approach like that? Just one most important forecasting tip.
If Yeah, thank you, sir. Thank you for the very important question here. If my slides are visible here, is it visible, Dr. Tanveer? Okay. My Okay, if not visible, so at the very end of my conclusion, I mentioned that the end use modeling, econometric modeling, and their combination are the most often used method for medium and long term forecasting. So the answer is there that the combination, the hybrid model, like end use modeling, what is exactly customer use, their habits, the types of appliances, the technology, the age of, because older, if they are using, if you take Japan or other countries, they don't use old appliances, but in our countries from last 15-20 years, even in our houses still, even in my house, there is like the old national air condition is being used. So you can see that the pattern, the type of, so it is end use modeling, while econometric, the factors that we already consider, and those and dependent variables are factor if they incorporate. So the combination of that, in above all, we need to use those artificial intelligence or expert system based techniques combinedly with this, so we can get much better forecasting result. Personally, we utilize that, we use fuzzy system for short term load forecasting, and we got a very accurate, not very highly accurate, but still compared to the other existing techniques, we got much better result. And we got that work was published in IEEE fuzzy system, which is 9.1 and 9.5 impact factor. So my conclusion is we have to use some hybrid system along with the expert system or artificial intelligence based systems, so we will get much better results of long-term forecasting.
Thank you, Dr.
Okay, Doctor, there are
You are very welcome, sir.
Thank you, sir, for your questions. There are some questions from the audiences here as well. You mentioned quite a few times the telecom infrastructure in your presentation, that will also play an important role. So this is my question, as well as like from one of the audiences, that how the telecom infrastructure will affect the forecast in the future.
Okay, let me give a practical example of Pakistan. Right now, the telecom infrastructure is almost nil, and the merged district, or we call ex-FATA. Recently, we visited to an area in Landikottal region where they already planning to have a technology school. The first ever school, and they are planning to have an international standard there. But the problem is there is no telecom infrastructure. There is no services are available. So you have to go there because of different security reasons are different, though the government has announced. But if now the infrastructure will, though utilization of, you will, right now there is no use, but compared to the areas where telecom infrastructure is available, you use gadget, your overall energy consumption or electricity consumption is more. So they contribute to the overall forecasting also. If you don't incorporate that, because if you right now in this pandemic, if you remove the internet availability or the communication infrastructure unavailability, it's hard to communicate. The people were not allowed to go outside. There was, everywhere you sometime there was a complete lockdown. So the utilization of these resources are very important. If you utilize it, it can contribute to the electricity consumption as well. So that is how the telecom infrastructure contribute to the overall forecasting.
Dr. Tariq, there is another question, like regarding the accuracy used. We saw a slide where the accuracy was increasing as we are moving from the long-term forecasting to the short-term forecasting. So based on your research, based on the literature available, do you have any idea like how much accuracy is required or how much uncertainty is acceptable in the system for these three scenarios?
Okay, in terms of accuracy, so let me discuss about power quality disturbances. You have sag, you have swell, you have flickers and all harmonics, etc. And sometimes you have brownouts that leads to the blackout. So how you predict that? For example, not every day you will have blackout, but these, if you accurately forecast those short term occurrence of these power quality disturbances, like suddenly you have voltage down in the form of sag, or suddenly rise in the form of swell, or similarly other power quality disturbances. So they are comparatively, I would not say exactly like in terms of percentage like 80, 90, 70, because uncertainty is still there. But even if say 70%, you can accurately identify that those disturbances. So you can identify, for example, if continuously you get the sags, which means that there is some suddenly some a huge plant is turned off or on. So on the basis of that, you feel that sag as well. So that we did an experiment. I got data of Princeton University was having its own power plant. So they give me the last 3 years data. So when we applied our at that time I use PatriNet and then SVM as a technique, as a machine learning techniques to identify. And I came to know, or we came to know that at 8 o'clock and 4 o'clock around that time, you have those disturbances. So which means that when we dug out, we found out that because they shut down the system, they turn on the system at 8 o'clock or around 8 o'clock and turn off few system at 4 p.m. in the evening. So that's why you have these kind of later disturbances as well. So if you can accurately estimate that later on, because brownout blackouts may not happen that frequently or that long, so then you can predict that how much these forecasting can contribute. So that is what you can get a better result in terms of when you are using short-term load forecasting techniques.
Thank you so much, Dr. Sir. It was so nice of you. You gave a very detailed theoretical program, background in a very short time. Thank you for being with us.
Thank you for having me, and sorry for the disturbance. I didn't know that my screen was hanged. I'm sorry for that little disturbance.
That's okay.
And
Thank you
for
so much.
having me.
Bye. Ladies and gentlemen, our next presenter is Dr. Anindya Bhattacharya, who is the Executive Director at the Celestial Earth India. And India is having more than 18 years of research and consulting experience in the field of energy planning and policy across the world. He has worked with many countries in Asia on national and regional energy policies. And India is extensively working in the area of climate mitigation using optimal energy systems analysis modeling tools such as MessageX. And India is currently leading the Energy and Climate Change Division of the Celestial Earth India. He is actively involved with the National Institute of Transformational India, NITI-IO, of Government of India, developing national energy model, and also with the state governments developing state-level energy models and planning tools. And India obtained PhD in energy science from Kyoto University, Japan, and MS in resource economics from West Virginia University, USA. Over to you, Dr. Anindya. Dr. Anindya.
Okay. Yes. Yeah. Am I audible now?
Yes, you are audible. Can you please share your slides? We are looking at your outlook right now.
So.
You can just press F5, and that will make it to the here.
This is okay now?
Yeah, you are perfectly audible. So over to you, sir.
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Danvi, and thank you very much for the SARC Energy Center to invite me to be a presenter and the panelist in this very important, the discussion topic of today's world, and especially this is very important for the SARC and the South Asia region countries. Myself, Dr. Aninda Bhattacharya. I'm from India and I'm leading this Energy and Environment and Climate Change Division of the Celestial Earth. We are a research based consulting organization. We are located near Delhi. Today, actually, I'll be discussing of the importance of this, importance of the long-term forecasting and the energy, the planning, and also we'll be talking about that what is the scope of integrated energy planning for the SARC region, and how our integrated planning tool can be used for long-term energy decision-making activities in the region. So as my previous speaker mentioned about the load forecasting, and that was a very important topic. But I'll be touching upon particularly a little broader aspect of energy planning, which is at a macro level. But we are also working on developing a kind of assessment tool, which we termed as application of energy planning and integrated assessment tool on Message IX. We call it Epitome, which is linked with the advanced AI-based decision support tool for energy planning, as well as our deep dive, the data analytics, which helps the policymaker to understand the implications of different policies and then how that can be utilized for different activities, the policymaking activities in the countries or at the region. So this is my kind of coverage of the presentation. I'll give a quick background of what is the current situation of SARC regional energy system, then why we need a regional energy assessment, and what is about the SARC energy model that we are right now working on, and energy planning tool that we have been working on. And this is a work in progress tool, but we have done a pretty good progress in that. And then the scope of using this Epitome in this region in terms of sustainable energy planning. So from the very specific load forecasting, what we have been listening so far now, so that is very micro level assessment, which is, in my opinion, this is one of the most fundamental work that needs to be done. And this, I am now going to talk about it. Actually, this is can very well linked to the the short and mid-term load forecasting, which could be a very important component of this broad level, macro level energy planning and forecasting. So what is SARC energy, or the current energy scenario? So we are currently doing a study. I have these slides, and the findings are kind of borrowed from our ongoing study that we are doing for Asian Development Bank now. But I picked up just to show that what is the current status of the different socioeconomic and the energy condition. So because these are the informations which are very much important why we are talking about long-term forecasting, not only at the power sector, but it is also important to know the entire energy system, because quite often we misunderstood or mixed up the two concept of electricity and energy. And this is from my experience that most of the cases, even in the government, the planning departments or the state, the power department, they mixed up and they interchangeably used energy and electricity. But this is two different things. Basically, electricity is a subset of the energy sector. So these are the current status. Like the first block is talking about GDP in terms of PPP. You can see that this the yellow line is basically for the South Asia region, which is representing the SAARC countries mostly. So it is quite a one of the most not the fastest growing, but it is the second fastest growing region within Asia. And also the population, in terms of the population growth, this is still highest in the region in Asia as a whole. And then in terms of the per capita, this is quite low compared to the East Asian region or maybe the Asian average. If you see, the black line is the Asian average, and the yellow line you can see in the last block, that is the per capita GDP, which is still below. So it shows that our economic, the prosperity, the individual growth prosperity is still aspirational, and we are yet to reach even the Asian average. But our population growth rate is very high, and also our GDP per capita, we are second, but not in the first as well. So it indicates that there is a heterogeneous demographic and economic condition of the region, which basically warrants for doing a proper and very scientific energy planning and policy, because energy is one input factor for the economic growth and development, which affects the entire gamut of the activities. Now, if you see the sectoral energy demand of the region, this is the current situation. These are the industry level, residential, transport, and electricity, and then the biomass and the commercial and residential. So these are the basic sectors that we are normally looking into in terms of the demand assessment, the useful energy demand that right now my previous speaker was talking about the demand forecasting. Actually, this is at an aggregated level, and to identify these kind of growth rates, the application of the micro level different econometric or the hybrid models are very, very important. But nevertheless, so this is the kind of different energy demand growth prospect are actually visible for this region, which is significantly high over the period of time. So all these, basically you can see that residential and commercial, the top blue line is indicating the residential, commercial, thermal and electrical energy requirement is the highest percentage growing energy demand sector in the region. So it indicates that our electrical consumption at the residential sector, electrical or thermal consumption in the residential sector, basically this includes the cooling, heating demand, it includes the electrical demand for lighting and the different home appliances. So it is going to increase because our population is also increasing. So that is one of the factors that why we are having this particular sector's electricity growth is so high compared to the other sectors. Now, if you see the industrial energy demand, it is the third highest, and vis-a-vis the transport sector growth is the second highest, because transport. So this clearly indicates which are the sectors are the maximum energy consumer in the future in this region. So the primary and the final energy supply of the region. So this is the top block is showing the primary energy supply situation until 2050, which is mostly driven by coal, followed by the gas. Gas is also significantly high, and also there are a lot of oil. And solar and the other renewables are not significantly coming as of now under the baseline situation in this region. But this is mostly the fossil-based, the fossil-based energy mix that we are expecting until foreseeable future in this region. Similarly, the bottom up is showing the final energy consumption by resources. So you can see that electricity is coming up in a big way, but still until 2050, you can expect that around 20 to 30% or less than 30% of energy, final energy, will be supplied through electricity, but rest will be more than 30% will be from oil, and then subsequently the coal, and even for the biomass also. So it indicates that the region is becoming, because electricity is supposed to be the relatively cleaner fuel use compared to the direct coal use or the direct oil use. So in that context, the region still needs to go into the cleaner side, because our electrical energy consumption in day-to-day life or even in the economic activity is still lower. So we'll be using more oil, so which will be directly contributing to the emissions, and also that will impact, because the whole region is basically the net energy importer. So, so this picture clearly indicates that what is the current status and why, for our overall sustainable economic development of the region, why energy is so important. Because if we still see that until 2050, more than 40 or 50% is coming from imported fuel, that clearly indicates that our economic development will be jeopardized if the geopolitical situation forces the price to be high. The international fuel prices are high, and we have to basically accept that high price, and that will impact the economic growth and development. So the economic development, sustainable development, environment, and energy are interlinked, and that these graphs are showing that and justifying it. So this is just the other side of this story, the final energy consumption by different sectors. So as you can see from here, the top one is the transport sector, that is the purple one. The red color shows the residential thermal use, which includes the cooling and all. And also the next part is the electrical part, the residential, commercial, electrical section, and then it followed by industry, and then the other electricity use. So you can easily see that this residential, commercial, and the transport are the major more than 50% energy is being consumed in these two sectors only. So it also indicates that what should be our focus in terms of sustainable development and long-term energy planning, that which are the sectors energy consumption we should be focused on. Now, need for the SARC energy model. So basically, why we need the regional energy model? So in that context, there are basically six prime, the challenges what we are facing in this region, and why it should motivate us to this regional energy planning, integrated energy planning. So there are six things. One is that renewable energy target. So this whole region is approximately around 2,000 gigawatt of solar renewable energy potential is there. This number may not be accurate, but it could be nearer than that, which can be commercially used. Now, economics of energy supply. So this is the affordability of the energy and power supply is very important for this region because of our economic status. We also need the universal access of energy, so 100% electrification, as well as the reliable and power and energy supply is most important for this region's continuous and sustainable development. Then we need to reduce our energy loss, because that is a very big problem in this whole region, that our the energy loss is so high. In some cases, it's almost touching 30 to 40%, which is basically a open hole in the bottom of the tank, and whatever water we pour in, that will go out. So that is the case. So unless we plug in those loss reduction plans, whatever we do the planning, it will all going to fail. Efficient use of energy, because achieving highest level of energy efficiency is required, because energy is becoming expensive, and we really need to conserve that and use that in an efficient way, so that we can save money, and that can contribute to the other development aspect. We are not in a position to waste any energy, where we are buying this energy by using the international currencies. And finally, the energy resource use. So this entire region is filled up with not only the hydrocarbons, but the renewables as well. So it should be a collective measures that all the member countries of this region should work together and for the betterment of the region as a whole. Because in today's world, it is very difficult to grow independently unless there is a cooperation. So like all these countries, we are all land integrated. So there are the much easier way of integrating this whole region and develop these entire energy resources and harness these resources. Maybe the hydro is cheaper in Pakistan, maybe hydro cheaper in Bhutan, but that may not be possible for India or may not be possible for Bangladesh or for Sri Lanka. But if a collective measure can be developed so that the power can be traded easily through these countries and all of us can get the benefit of all these things. So that's what it is very important. I think everyone understand that, but I thought that these are the points that needs to be iterated time and again. Also energy security challenge, as I told you, that because the region is kind of a net energy importer, so there are a lot of internal and the external challenges, not only that leads towards energy security issue. So the geopolitical vulnerability, we also have domestic challenges, we also have international challenges. So the energy security is a big issue for this region. So the planning is so important, and the forecasting of the energy demand and supply is also very crucial in terms of ensuring our energy security of the region, which can directly contribute to our economic growth and development. So there are different type of risk associated to the regional, like the institutional risk, organizational risk, financial risk, human resource risk, because we really do not have much skilled manpower who can also go into the transition to the new technologies that we are talking about. We are talking about hydrogen technology, we are talking about advanced hybrid renewable energy technologies. So we really do not have that skilled manpower right now, but it needs to be in our planning that how we can build that so that all these facilities can be maintained and can be properly promoted. So there are six different, the risks which are associated with this energy sector, which needs to be considered as well while doing the planning. Now, this is the typical planning process, energy planning process, which we call it as rather static planning and unidirectional planning. We do the power demand forecasting, like the demography of economy, right? Like my previous speaker was talking about the power demand forecasting. It goes into the generation planning, then transmission planning, then the distribution planning. Now, at least in India and the other, some of the SAARC countries, the electricity sector has been deregulated. So this generation, transmission, distribution companies are all separated now. Now it has also created a problem because previously when it was all integrated, there could be under one company, the planning could have been done for generation, transmission, and distribution. Now all three companies are separate. Now they stop talking to each other. So basically there are more number of inconsistencies in the planning of the different types of players in the whole energy system. And then the RE planning is done by someone else and energy efficiency planning is done by someone else. So all these were required for the overall integrated planning, but mostly these are disintegrated planning that is now happening. Now the drawbacks and what is the potential risk of the planning. These are the planning areas that we have identified: the demand forecasting, generation planning, transmission planning, then we have distribution planning, RE planning, energy planning, energy efficiency planning. But these are the potential risks. I am not going into the line by line, but this highlighted like the most of the cases that's happening that if the demand forecasting is not properly done, then it can lead us to the inappropriate assessment of demand and the different inaccurate assessment of the different energy commodity demand. So which lead us to the next level of risk in the generation, that if we don't do the proper demand forecasting, then it can lead us to the planning for overcapacity. Like we may need 100 gigawatt, but we because of this wrong assessment, we might end up setting up 200 gigawatt, and then the 100 gigawatt is basically excess capacity, and obviously the problem will be that the capacity utilization, the PLF will go down, and you'll get into the sunk cost. And subsequently it will go down because this is all integrated in the system, because energy starts flowing, and once it starts flowing it will not get stopped. We cannot, unless we have a huge storage system, and if we do this then it will increase our cost. So the entire system has to be optimized so that we can reduce our total cost that is going to the development process of the energy system. Otherwise, if there is a problem in the generation planning, then it will cascade to the transmission planning. Similarly, because everything that your network planning needs to be based on how much evacuation is required, how much energy needs to be evacuated. And also you really need to know that where the power has to go, which part of the country or the region has more demand, so what should be the line capacity. So all these things gets disturbed if the demand forecasting is not properly done. That even further goes down to the distribution planning, and that is also affecting the renewable energy, because the RE planning, which are also having a grid connected and off grid, both are planned. And most of the cases, what we see that at least in India, that half of the capacity that we are talking about, like 100 gigawatt of solar, out of that 40 gigawatt we are expecting to come from the rooftop, which is the off-grid net system, and 60 is from as of now the 60 is planned for the grid connected. But we are faltering that target to achieve the 40 gigawatt because of there are plans and policies are in place, but reality it is not happening, because the distribution companies are getting afraid of allowing people even to set up the small power plant, the units on the top of the roof. And net metering is also there, but they are not allowing them to wheel the power back. So that is disincentivizing the users to set up the rooftops. The fear is because the distribution companies, they don't know what is their capacity of the network, the local network, whether they will be able to absorb this kind of the intermittent energy or power that is coming into the system. So all these are a cascading impact of lack of planning, and that can lead us to the failure of all the major national level planning and policy and the targets that we are talking about. All our countries in the region, we are all moving towards the low carbon economy because that is the need of the hour. We cannot continue emitting the GHGs for the sake of our own people. We need to do something. On the side by side, we need to continue our development aspects because we need to grow. We need to feed our people. Everyone needs to have the decent living standard. So to provide that, we need to grow. On the other hand, we cannot pollute the environment. So what is the solution? We need to have a proper balanced economic planning activity. And for that, an integrated assessment is required. So I have already discussed these points, so I'm not going into too much detail. Now, giving all this background, what we are doing is that we are developing the SARC energy model. We are in the process of that, so we are building one by one, the country-wise. So how we are doing it? Basically, we are covering these aspects that sustainable energy planning, we should cover the issues like the goal setting, that what should be the regional goal, then what are the options that the region is having, then what should be the plan of achieving these options, then how it should be implemented, and it should be measurable and verifiable, and then there will be a feedback that the assessment needs to be done on a regular basis to see that what are the changes that we need to do in the final goal and subsequent. So this will be a circular process of a continuous monitoring and the evaluation of the system so that it can lead us to a sustainable future of energy. So keeping that in mind, basically we are applying the Message IX open source integrated energy modeling platform. This is an open source platform which is developed and promoted by the International Institute for Applied Systems Analysis. This is an intergovernmental research institute, and I think currently there are more than 26 member countries. And India, Pakistan are all the member countries of EASA. I don't know about the other SAARC countries as of now, but at least I know India and Pakistan was there. So this is an open source modeling platform that has been developed, and which is a very robust, very strong, and very advanced level of planning tool, which can help to integrate the different aspects of energy planning. What I have been telling, that it is not only the electricity, but all other demands and the technology can all link together in this system and to do a planning. Now, so this is a least cost energy systems optimization. So it is a pretty standard kind of a least cost optimization linear programming type model. In today's presentation, I'm not going into too much of technical detail of this model, but it is same like, I don't know how many of you are aware of that there's a Times Merkle, there's a AIM type model, then also the message eye. So these are all similar type of bottom-up energy systems optimization model. So it optimizes the system cost of providing the energy supply to meet certain demands, which is given exogenously in the model, to meet that, and with the set of technologies, with the set of constraints. So it provides the how in a least cost manner the energy can be supplied to meet certain demand. So we have basically recently launched India model. Message IX India is launched in 2018. We have also done the similar the model for Bangladesh that has been done. We also started using these for different state level in India, but this can be done for others and for different purposes. Now, what is the developing the Epitome, the energy planning integrated assessment tool on Message IX, which I thought that it would be an interesting topic to discuss today, that how this kind of platform can be used at the regional level planning. So as we know that interlinkages of the economic, social, environmental system. So this is a kind of a system dynamics approach. This picture has been picked up from WRI report recently on system dynamics. So it clearly indicates that how our system is, the economic, social, and environmental systems are interlinked. So there is a human capital, natural capital, physical capital. So all these are interlinked, and energy plays a kind of a it's like a body system, and the energy flows inside the body's veins and nerves as a blood. So it is important to understand that how the different the aspects are linked to each other. Keeping that in mind, we have basically developed the planning. We call it the earlier one. You have seen that we call it a static planning model, which is the existing model right now for the countries who are working on it. But we are proposing an advanced one, which is the energy planning and integrated dynamic planning, which covers and interlinked all the components of the planning. And we are also adding 4 outside component, and there is a one bottom up, the society, economy, and environment, because without these no energy or the even the power or energy model cannot be successful and cannot be sustainable for the long term planning. So we need to know the technology, what are the new technologies that are available today and in the future. We need to know the institutional and the regulatory compliance requirement, like the cross-border energy trade, what SAARC has been promoting for long, and I appreciate their effort. So this is also very important to be considered, and the finance and investment. We cannot ignore that part. We cannot go for a recommendation of certain technology which is exorbitantly high, and the cost of energy supply becomes so expensive that our citizens in this region cannot afford. And finally, the energy and other resource supply, that also needs to be considered. So it is not only the electricity, but other energy resources. So all, and you can see that these red arrows we have added separately to interlink each other and linking to the economy and environment. So keeping this overall objective, we are conceptually frameworking that regional energy model, which is starting from the system dynamics approach, which is part of covering the physical, natural, human, and social capital, and then through a macroeconomic modeling process. We call it a CG-based macroeconomic. CG is the computable general equilibrium model, which determines the impact of the macroeconomic condition on the different sectoral outputs, which we are basically taking in the context of energy. Like all the sectoral energy demands, I mentioned at the beginning that there are different sectors of energy demand, like industrial energy demand, transport energy demand, residential, commercial, agriculture. So all these demands are basically linked to each other and linked to the economic growth and development. So we really need to know that what will be my future energy demand of this sector. Like if my economy grows faster, like suppose for 6% or 7% per annum, what is my expected energy demand growth in the agriculture sector or my industry sector? So we really need to know, and vis-a-vis. So like this linked, and then we are taking that into the energy systems model, which is basically based on the message IX modeling platform. And then we are also trying to take the feedback to the power system model, which can actually provide a very grassroots level planning. What my previous speaker was telling, that the power planning is very important for understanding that where the actual infrastructure development is required. It is not necessary that the national planning will help the investors or the companies to set up power plant, but they can take the feed from this kind of assessment, overall picture of the country, and they can conduct certain power system model, which gives them the very granular level information that what should be my capacity, what type of technology, what should be my transmission line capacity, distribution, and so on and so forth, and where. So all these are basically a kind of a holistic approach of presenting the future framework of the regional energy model. Not necessary that each and everything right now we are conducting and doing at our institute here, but we are promoting this idea so that all the stakeholders, agencies can come forward and contribute and develop this whole idea in a collective manner. So in that process, we are developing the Epitome, which is a message. Basically, that why we need a kind of a tool is because it is a complex modeling platform. It needs a lot of training and capacity building, and long-term association with this kind of modeling tool, and the syntax writing and the coding capacity. So it is not possible for everyone to use it. So it was a kind of a barrier for in this country, at least from my experience. We have seen that this is a kind of barrier for this region to adopt this kind of scientific model-based long-term planning, which is very predominant in the Western world, like in Europe, in US, or even in the other developed country. We often see that all the government planning comes through some kind of a model-based, sophisticated model-based assessment. But why it is not happening in India? There could be the reason that these kind of modeling, capability and the tools are not available so far. And the second option could be because of this complexity and the lack of understanding and the skill set. It was not properly understood by the policymakers that how it can be utilized. So we are trying to bridge that gap. So we understand that this is essential for this, because this situation, this region, the growth potential we have, and also we have a lot of complexities. The main complexities are the heterogeneity of the socioeconomic conditions and so on and so forth. So unless a sophisticated model is used, it will be very difficult to have a scientific long-term sustainable planning. Now, how to bridge that gap? So that's what this effort that we have made to bridge this gap, to make it little useful and simpler for the policymakers and the other stakeholders. So it has got a different benefits, like I will take you through that very soon. So it has got a flexibility in modeling, visualization. It is having a very strong visualization, a deep informative. You can go down, deep dive into it, and you can dig out a lot of information in a very simple way and in a very visually attractive way. You can create a lot more unlimited scenarios by clicking certain buttons. You can run these kind of softwares and the models in a web platform. You really don't need to install anything in your computer. It is live and dynamic and globally accessible. It can be uploaded in one of the servers, and then it is globally accessible to by anyone. So this is just a kind of our initial thought process of how the South Asian regional energy planning tool can be developed. So this is our vision. We are working on it step by step, but I thought that I'll just give a quick glimpse of our, the future action plans, that in which direction we are trying to take this whole process. So we'll be creating a kind of 6-country, the modeling, assessment, and it will be integrated under one platform. And by clicking the country-specific information, they can go down to the information like if you click like India or Pakistan or Bangladesh, the next slide will open that, where you'll see the demographic information, energy statistics, emissions, and climate mitigation targets. And then if you click the button, the epitome, then you can go down to the particular, the stories like energy stories, sectoral energy mix, GHG emissions, investments, and you will have a display panel in the right. And you can also see that in the right top bottom, there are the sliders. So those sliders we are thinking of providing. We are providing sliders which can be accessible by the user to create their own scenarios. Like, okay, if someone wants to see, like, if in my country my electric vehicle share by 2050 goes up to 50%. So what is my expected impact? What will be my energy supply requirement? What is my emissions impact? So all you can see by just putting that slider in the required place and press the button to run simulation button. So like this, we are in the process of developing it. So this is it's being developed now. It is not fully developed yet. Now, this is the energy planning and integrated tool, which is right now available. So there are two components of this whole thing. One is the static dynamic data analytic platform, which actually runs on the preloaded scenarios, and you can select the scenario from the left button, and you can go down and you can see the different type of energy mixes. So I will just try to open the online thing, and I'll show you that how it works. Just a second. My screen is still visible, right?
Yes, it is visible.
Okay. So this is just the platform that we have created. So it is already, the models are already preloaded. You can just select. You can see all the countries are here. Like Bangladesh is here. We are working for other countries also. So all these countries are here. Like India is here. Indonesia, Pakistan is here. So if you just click, suppose for India, suppose for Bangladesh. So you click Bangladesh, and then it will be loading the Bangladesh information. So this is all coming from the message IX optimization model. So once this is loaded, so now the Bangladesh is loaded here, and then you can actually go down to see that what is my sectoral, the different type of sectoral, like the primary energy and final energy. So if you can see that, suppose for the final energy, you see the sectors, and then this is the like the electricity, then what is the transport sector thing. So you can see that how my transport sector, what is the demand of the transport sector in Bangladesh over the until 2050, and who is consuming what. You can see the different types of the transport, and the different type of fuels that they are consuming. So you can also see like the electricity generation, that how the electricity generation of this country, and all these informations are downloadable. So basically this is the by sector, and if you see by fuel, it will tell you the the fuel mix as well. Okay, so it is showing the fuel mix, that what type of the capacity, who is supplying how much energy. So, and also you can see that this can also be used for the different type of planning, that there is a NDC planning tool which can help you to understand that, okay, if my scenario is like this, then what is my progress in terms of the achieving my, so this is the targeted NDC for Bangladesh, and this is our the baseline achievement. So if this baseline continues, then Bangladesh, this country can actually achieve this level of emissions. And then you can see the emissions intensity to GDP. So how my performance, these are the red line is the baseline. So if you go to the scenario one, so you can have a comparison of the different the comparison between baseline and the scenario. So this is a very, now the green line is the scenario. So we have run a low carbon scenario for Bangladesh, and it is showing that compared to the baseline, you are gaining a lot in terms of the emissions intensity. So like this, this tool is, I'm not spending too much time, but these are all, there are certain important things like the key performance indicators of the country, which is very important, the policy tools for any country, like the system cost. What is the cost if I go for this particular technology? Then what is my import dependency impact? Like if I, so this is the import dependency. So basically the baseline and the scenario. So you always see that the baseline is higher, the scenario is lower. So your scenario is giving a better import dependency compared to your, the baseline. So similarly, you can see a lot of other comparisons also, like what is my GHG emissions compared to the baseline. So this is all preloaded thing that we are already having. So this is one part of our exercise that we are doing right now. And also we are having the another one, which is on the decision support tool, which also maybe this is for also Bangladesh, that where if you just log in, this is a web-based tool. So we are trying to integrate these two now under same platform, which also helps you the slider-based, the scenario building exercise. So you can actually have the model is running in the server, so you really don't need to install anything in your computer or anything, but you can create your own scenario and run it through the optimization model of message. So basically you can see, suppose you can identify, if you want to see that what is the impact of the carbon price, you can set your carbon price here and you can run it. Like in the transport sector, as I was telling you, that okay, if I have to see that my electric mobility in the car segment needs to be baseline is 14%, but it needs to be okay, so there is some check and balance here, but you can select this button, and whatever you want to set, like in terms these numbers are telling that what percentage you would like to select for electric vehicle penetration by 2050, and then you submit the button, and then you will basically see that result. So so this will go to the I'll just run it, but I will not continue this because it will take some time. So I'll just show that once you submit the button, sorry, it is giving the error that you are creating an improper scenario. So there is a check and balance also. So there will be a less chance that you will not be able to, you will not make any error. But anyway, so I was trying to, okay, just forget it. But we also have a loaded scenario here. So you can have a see that it was a previously run scenario that I run it yesterday only, that EV scenario you already like EV 30%. So I put the condition of 30% EV penetration by 2040, and then I run the model, and then you can see the results that what is the impact here. So like this, you can create any scenario that you would want to see, through this model, which will provide you the optimal results, and you can actually compare your results under difference. In like, this is the baseline, this is your high renewable energy scenario, this is the energy security scenario, and this is your scenario that we right now run, which is a 30% EV penetration. So like this, these models have been, we are building this upon. Now, I will tell you that the scope of using such Epitome SARC for the region. So what happened that, this particular modeling platform is a versatile integrated assessment platform. So you can integrate a lot many things in this mainframe without much effort, actually. So like this, you can, this particular picture has been picked up from EASA, but like this, we are using this message in the, this is the energy systems core model. Now this can be like, we have added the cooling module. So it actually, this module is integrated with message IX, and we are assessing the what is the long-term cooling demand of the region. Similarly, we are right now working on the basin model, where we are integrating the water, energy, land nexus in the model. So we want to see that what is the implication of the water feature. Water is also interlinked with the energy. So how the future long-term water demand, water availability is going to impact the energy and also the land use. So we are right now working on it. The transport module is already been developed. You can see that the detailed transport module has also been done. The gains model is basically, or the similar type of air pollution model can also be linked to it. The magic is a climate model, so which can also feed into it. It is, the linkages are already there, but you just need to activate it. And this part is the macroeconomic model, which I mentioned at the beginning, that we are also linking this with the CG type model. So this is the framework that we are talking about now. And the potential application of Epitome in the SARC region, like it can be used for SARC renewable energy plan. So it can help developing the target-oriented, RE development plan and corresponding climate mitigation plan. It can also focus on the regional energy efficiency action plan. It can also be used for regional sustainable mobility plan, and also regional climate mitigation plan and NDCs. So there could be other, options and the other potential application of this kind of tool. But I think I just picked up a couple of things which are might be of interest. And similarly, it can also be used towards the net zero emissions, which is a sector, cross-sectoral, effort that needs to be done, like the deep decarbonization. The lot of new technologies can be assessed, like the carbon capture storage can be assessed, the storage, not only the CCS but CCU. Then the hydrogen technology can be assessed through this kind of a modeling framework, which can finally lead us to the net zero emission. And this is the kind of development stages, as I told, that this is a quite ambitious plan that we have over the next several years, but we are gradually moving step by step. So this is our current development status. Like, we have developed developed the national models in message IX. So we have done for India, Bangladesh, Pakistan, Sri Lanka, Bhutan, Nepal, Maldives are ongoing now. In terms of the Epitome DST, what I showed you, these two platforms we have done for India, Bangladesh, Pakistan, and Bhutan, Nepal, Maldives are ongoing. In terms of the macroeconomic model, we just started it, so we have Bhutan already done, but India, Bangladesh, and the other countries, we are in the process. So the first will be the Bangladesh, and India will be completed very soon, and then maybe next year we'll pick up for the rest of the countries. Developing module, like the completed one, that cooling part we have already, cooling and heating part we have already mentioned. We have already added that. The green transportation is already added. The hydrogen component has been added. And one ongoing activities that we are now working on, the land energy, water land nexus module to be integrated with this model. And Epitome SARC is an ongoing process. So it will be, you can understand it is quite a long-term plan. So we are developing step by step And we are moving. Our final objective is to the epitomes, developing the regional epitome for integrated modeling. So I will stop here. Thank you for your patience, and I'll be very happy if there is any questions, which I will be happy to answer. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Ananya. So nice of you. It was wonderful to look at the tool and to look at your presentation. I mean, it's refreshing to see that the region is developing such models. There are a few questions for you, and some are from my side. So my first question, like you mentioned, different models, integrated energy models. How would you compare this to your model to LEAP or Markle times? Like, what would you say that why should one use this message IX rather than LEAP or Markle times?
Yeah, I think this is a very fundamental question, but there are quite a few positives for why we picked up message. Because the leap is right now, it is recently they have added with the optimization, but previously it was not. It was only the accounting tool. So and the message and the Markle are of course of the same category. These are all optimization from the beginning. So the reason why we picked up message is that it is readily available in the open source domain. So there is not much expenses to develop this model, and whoever is going to install it, they do not have to spend any license fee for this. For LEAP, it is still under license, but maybe for government, some cases the LEAP is of course in the open source or maybe the free of cost. But the Times Markle, it is still through the membership. It is not available in the open domain. So this is primary, and the second reason of adoption is that it has got a lot of modular facility. Like as I mentioned, that there are multiple models can be separately built and it can be easily plugged in. So you really don't need to develop the whole model in one go. You can partly build step by step and keep on adding to it. So this modular facility is a very big flexibility and the benefit for adopting this kind of model in our region.
Great, thank you. There is a question from one of the audience, and our deputy director was also like asked the same question, that you mentioned web-based access to the model. So that is one thing, like how to access this model through web. Is it open source, like anybody can use it, or like the scenarios? Then so this was from an audience. And then regarding the SARC Energy Center, we basically developed a SARC data portal on our website, which gives you like you can call it the annual outlook for different SARC nations. But I mean, looking at your work, it is fascinating, and we would like to have some kind of linkage to your work there in our portal. So is it open source? Is it available for anyone, or do we have to get, is it licensed, something like that?
No, actually, it is not yet available in the open domain because it is still getting developed. We are developing it, part by part as and when we are getting the funding for it. So, but the whole purpose is to make it in the open platform, so that anyone, like for example, like for SARC, suppose you have already a setup a center which is having a data center. So if this this tool can be hosted in the SARC data center, then what happens that through SARC link, people can directly go to this, and then whole thing can be transferred from our side to the SARC data energy centers server, and the whole model and the tool can be stored there. So that right now what we are doing, we are basically working with some kind of under contract with certain funding agency, and so separately we are supporting them, and we are providing the limited access to those agencies who are supporting this work like this. But but there is no such fee that we have thought about, because it is completely developed in-house in our research center.
Okay,
But if
and can anybody access it through web?
yes, it can be accessed anywhere globally, because it is linked to the web link only. So you just need to get a public IP, and through that you can access it. So it is very simple. So right now, actually doing it with West Bengal state government, and that will be up in their public website very soon. So that could be a good example that how this can be accessible to the public.
There are a couple of other questions. So one is that what is the basis of generation mix for primary power supply, which you mentioned in your presentation?
So can you come again this question?
So what is the basis of generation mix for primary power supply that you mentioned? Like,
Okay. So basically, this is coming out of the optimization. Like we are providing that this is the requirement, the energy requirement of the country, whichever country it is, and then the model is optimizing based on the least cost option with certain constraints. Like, okay, we are giving the constraint like 50% RE capacity share should be by 2050. Or maybe we are telling that the cost of the solar should not be more than this, or maybe this is the total emissions reduction target. So under this constraint, the model is identifying what is the least cost generation mix, and this is the display. So it is all model generated. Only the 2020 number, it is the base year number, so which is the calibrated number as per the actuals.
Then the last question in slide 5, where you were showing the different trends. So why thermal demand in residential and commercial sector is increasing so rapidly? There was almost like an exponential increase.
Yes.
Given that our homes being electrified and there is a less demand of thermal sources. So why
So
was
basically basically this is the cooling and heating requirement put together. So the other one, if you have seen, this is basically we have splitted the cooling heating requirement and the other electrical requirement separately. So that's what the cooling requirement is expected to be in this region very high. And that is one of the reason we have developed the cooling model separately, because I think you must be aware, in India recently last year India has come up with the national cooling action plan. So that is indicating that how, because it is the the enormous energy is expected to flow in the residential and commercial sector to support the cooling. India is not, or this region is not much on the heating, but at least the mountain side there are a lot of heating requirement, but rest of the country and the region is mostly into the cooling, and there is a huge cooling requirement is expected. And that's the, and if you see the past trend of the cooling energy requirement, if you separate it from the residential energy, it is a mind-boggling growth in terms of electricity consumption in the cooling. So that is the reflection of that.
Thank you so much, Dr. Anandya. I mean, it was a wonderful presentation. It was very nice to see a regional model like yours. And one of my colleagues, Mr. Omar, he will get in touch with you in the near future about this. In
Yes.
the meanwhile, I will be very grateful if you could send me this presentation so we could
Absolutely.
share with the audience.
I will share it after my presentation.
Thank you so much. So nice of you. Thank you so much. Wonderful.
Thank you. And I am feeling honored to be here in this August gathering. Thank you so much. Bye.
Dear participants, we will now move to the last presentation of the day. We have Dr. Sheroz Khan. He completed his PhD at Strathclyde University, Glasgow, UK in 1994. He worked as a professor at the International Islamic University, Malaysia. He has supervised many PhD students and is the founding coordinator of the Wireless Communication and Signal Processing Research Group since 2006. Since December 2019, he has been working as a professor and research coordinator of Uneza College of Engineering and Information Technology at the Qasim University, Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. So over to you, Dr. Shirosa. Unmute yourself, sir.
Can you hear me now, Dr. Nabi?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Please,
Can you see my slide? Can you see my slides?
Yes, sir, we can.
Okay. So shall I go ahead?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
If you could make the full screen or the slideshow, that would be great. Otherwise, you can.
Yeah, okay. So I thank the SARC office in Islamabad for organizing such a useful workshop, a participant as well as speakers. And all of them, like presented their views and, the ideas and slides about, about their background and about the work they are doing. My background has been mostly in the academic institutions and related to research. So you will be a bit listening about the research element of this particular subject area. The other colleagues, they mention about, like the various load forecasting and, the energy demand and the various requirements at various levels in life, and stress on the system integration, and as a result, the benefit of the system integrations. We are all aware of that, like DC started as a not as a large system. DC started just as a standalone and isolated, great form. And also DC later on with Nikola Tesla, the AC came into picture, and because of its larger integration features, so the system started developing to become, like large integrated systems, and that was the main reason for the AC to prevail over the DC. But as one of the, maybe Anandya also and Prof. Tariq also mentioned about it, that the AC is lacking the storage capacity. So if the energy flows, then it should flow, should be consumed, and anything sent to your doorstep or your industrial unit should be consumed and used. Otherwise, there is no element in the system to store it. So that part of the integration is also was something which has to be addressed. Another thing related was this, that as a result of more and more system integration, please, you also keep this in mind, that consumerism developed. And over consumerism sometimes, like is being.
Dr. Feroz?
Yeah.
Sir, can you move the slides, please, because we are not.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Okay. Thank you. So my outlines are this I'm talking about, the interaction of the electricity network, conventional and the future one. My presentation outlines are like this. But I may be while talking to you, I may be talking a bit out of this presentation outlines, because being in the academic career, academic people are always trained to speak a lot compared to listening. So as I said, like the more of the integration is encouraging consumerism. And consumerism means that sometimes you do things for not of your needs, because you are doing it. The whole society is busy doing it, so that's why you are part of it. So you want to be in the flow. For example, there are people up in the air traveling, but very few of them are traveling for some useful objectives. Some exactly the same way there are people who are driving on the highways, but maybe 30% of 20, less than 30% people are driving for some useful objective of the day. So this integration is also associated with that over consumerism element. And as a result of this, we are going to consume, then it's in the interest of the system. That's something is the worrying part. So now the trend is back to the DC, and mainly because of the storage element, and also because of the to support the demand of people and the consumers at the point where the demand is. And not the demand is somewhere down in the south of the country and you are investing in generation in the north of the country. So know how to support that demand arising somewhere from some kind of generation there at the spot. So that's why the solar and the renewable energy is coming, particularly mainly from solar and the wind. They are coming into the picture. So this kind of, as I said, the integration is associated with over-consumerism, number one, but also integration is associated with a lot of losses and also a lot of damage to the environment and the landscape and the habitat. So that there should be a balance between the two sides, and that's how this DG, distributed generation, is coming into the picture. Now I'll be going now to the the recent development. As a result, we know that with the change of administration in very big countries, usually the channels and the media, they are all talking about what is going to happen very soon in the near future. So any burning thing like coal, gas, and petrol, they are being discouraged. Any burning thing like coal, gas, and petrol, they are being nowadays discouraged. Similar to smoking. If the smoking is going to damage the inner lungs and the potentials of humans, then exactly the same way the burning things are going to damage our environment. And when we damage our environment, then the things are coming. That's why the huge projects, one very big one from, this is, I have taken this from the BBC, and that is immediately cancelled by the Joe Biden administration, which was already in the work going on from Canada, using a big pipeline for transporting oil from some part of Canada down to the south of US. And this something is cancelled, so that means that some other priorities are in the picture. Also, this large kind of projects will come into being, also associated with some damages in the environment and things, but also it's associated with the jobs creation. And also, so once you invest in such big projects and later on the big project is cancelled, then also there are other side effects. It means the jobs opportunities and the things and whatever investment has been done. So coming back into my own subject area, how much people are returning back to the DC, which was electricity generation was originally DC by Thomas Edison, and as our already speakers mentioned about that, it integrated to a huge level. So because of the AC part, but AC part was missing, the storage capacity. So now again, the attention is being turning to this investment into the renewable energy sector, particularly the solar and the wind, because the solar and the wind both can be possibly, done very much locally, and particularly in some of the countries, for example, here in Saudi Arabia, and some like India, and of course in some African countries is available in abundance. So how to harvest this and then use it for, because the potential in this harvesting of energy from these sources is this, that it can be harvested at the time, not necessarily at the time, but at the spot where it is needed. And because of the storage potential, maybe it is available at a time when it's not being used, you can store it and then later on, for a use later on when you are in need of it. So this information I have taken from the International Energy IEA website, that how much investment has been in this area in this duration from 2012 to 2020 into solar, and then wind, and then hydro, and then other renewable energy. So hydro is also associated with the is one of the renewable energy category because it's recyclable thing, but the building of large dams is more damaging to the environment compared to small dams. And in fact, solar and wind and hydro were in use by human society since the society came into a formal kind of development. For example, we have used solar for drying our clothes. We have used solar for heating our water. And I still remember that when I'm originally from Peshawar, and when Hyderabad started, the original concept was that every house has to be, like have a heater, and the heater has to be collected from the solar to heat the water of every house. And also there was a kind of discussion that probably Hyderabad was in the flow of wind almost every day. So then, so there should be some wind form of energy. This was in the 80s. But people start realizing the use of these two resources now very much. And exactly the same way hydel for the construction of large dam once again, instead of those, hydel can also be used in your house for some indication purposes. When you turn the shower on and then the flow is coming up, then some small micro generator should be there to indicate that the water now flowing down and the shower is on, something like this. So for such small applications and such the use of solar and the wind and the hydel will be something which is coming into the future. Not the large one. The large one are also okay, but the large one are the one which are like associated with other side effects to the environment. So now this one is renewable electricity net capacity for the region wise. Look, China is leading. United States is next. And then this is for 2019, 20. This once again I've taken from the IEA website. So 2019, 20, 21, 4 years. So look, this something is China is leading in this something, and United States, and then the Europeans, and then India. So India is also doing, but too much, like investing into the planning, and too much investing and discussion and channels into the planning. Action like this is needed, like that of China. This I say this quoting from some very important, like Abdullah Yusuf Ali, basically from India, born in Bombay. But then he settled working as a principal of college in Lahore. And then he says, when I was going to have a project, then later on in my age, I found out that sometimes people of our age are just planning and discussing and investing into that. But people in the young age, they decide today and tomorrow they go for it. So I believe that China is doing that role. So that's why they are leading this. The rest of the countries are this for these 4 years. And this now coming to our radiation. This is a slide I've taken from one of the speakers who was because the IEEE Saudi section is organizing very important series of talks. And also I'm providing them with 1 or 2 speakers every, every semester. But they are highly efficient, I believe, webinars. So this I have taken from Prince State University, some speaker of Abdulaziz or some. So I have somewhere it should be mentioned here, not visible here. So I've taken this from his slides. And also this is available on some source website as well. Now, coming back to the solar potential of Saudi Arabia. So there is one student working with me from Qasim University at the postgraduate level. And then I asked him to give me data of the electricity load, electricity demand, and the for SKICO, Saudi Electric Corporation. And then I asked him also to give me latitude and longitude wise, the solar and the wind potential of Saudi Arabia, some main cities like 20 towns. So next data is coming about that. So Saudi Arabia has got a potential of 2121 kilowatt hour per square meter per year average. When you divide this by 365, it comes out to be this per day. And that is mostly at a place called Abha, like this. And moreover, Saudi Arabia is surrounded by Saudi Arabia is surrounded by we call it Persian Gulf, but this call it the Arabian Sea, the Arabian Gulf. And then this is the Gulf of Oman. And this is the Arabian Sea down there in the south, and the Gulf of Aden. And this one is the Red Sea. And then we have up in the north, Jordan and Syria, and then Iraq. And then here in the south, there is a Jordan, some portion of Jordan and Palestine. So beyond that, there is a sea again. So it's all from all around Saudi Arabia is surrounded by sea. So under the influence of a constant flow of winds uniformly throughout the year, and moreover, it's located in a part that is any time there is sunshine, right? So then that's why this data, something I skipped some slide here, but it's okay. Means like, they are focusing, the Saudi focus is now on solar and then concentrated solar energy. There is under the Ministry of Education, there is a department is called National Renewable Energy Program. Some data I've taken from them. One of my students from International Islamic University is now working with this department. So he says that plan to produce this 9.5 gigawatt of renewable energy by just in another 2 years time. But there is a planning of 60 gigawatt of energy by 2030, which is the vision, Saudi Arabian vision. They call it Vision 2030. So, and these two areas, the solar, from solar panel, and then this CSP by using some mirrors and some mechanism. And then, of course, the wind. So then this SKICO is also the Saudi electric supply is giving encouragement to the consumer, like this. So you will see from this data, because of its geographical location, look, this is the electricity consumption of 2016, 17, 18, 19, 20 of Saudi Arabia. And this shows that there is a clear increase rise from May until October like this. So I always, this is because of that, I also put this as an assignment, and some of the students also collected this data. I'll show you that later. So look, this shows, this pattern is like, if you draw lines like here, like this, so it shows like this. And that shows like a camel shape of structure, right? So this is for 1 year. This trend continues. If you collect data of the whole Saudi Arabia for 1 day, also will be the same. So like I will show you some slide later from some magazine about India. Also, they are having the same pattern, upload variation. So that means you are having an increase in demand from May until October in a year, and you are having an increase in demand from 10 a.m. or 11 a.m. depending upon location, until 4, 5 in the afternoon. Also, demand similar like this. So at this time of the day, you are also having plenty of solar. From 10 until 4, 5, plenty of solar. So one of my students, he just completed his PhD, and he was from Kuwait. His demand also same thing like this. This is for Saudi Arabia data, but his data with me in the thesis also the same pattern. So he has suggested also, Anandya talk about how rooftop generation and from solar like this. So his project was on rooftop generation, how to make peak demand of a day. This is for a year, but for a day also from 10 or 11 later and 4 5 in the afternoon, demand also is at peak. How this can be made from solar like this. And for the rooftop, like of the houses, now you are in the energy is available from 10 or 11 later on 4 5 in the afternoon, but you are not at home to use it. And the same goes to the masjid. In the masjid, the energy is available, and some other, like the shopping malls, but the energy is being collected and but is open later on, like the American system, later on in the evening. So then can be stored like this. So the peak demand can be easily met from local generation of the solar and the wind. So this is for the 4 years. And then this data is also I have collected from one of my assignment. But look, this was for 2000, 2000, and this is the months, 2016, 15, 16, 17, 18, 16, 17, 18, 19. But it shows also the same pattern, just to authenticate this data. So then he has also, this guy, his name is Sultan Al-Harbi, I'm thankful to him. He has also collected this wind and solar potential of these 20 towns. Look, and in a mixed format. And then I have plotted it here, and it's showing that latitude, longitude, and solar potential and the wind potential. And it shows that, look, the solar and the wind potential throughout the year and throughout the country remains almost, there is up and down there, but remain the same. Then the same data, I rearrange it by descending longitude and latitude. That means I arrange it by first in terms of descending latitude, starting from the north and going down to the south towards the equator, right? So this shows, look, the latitude, so ascending. But once again, the longitude I have not arranged it, I just rearrange the latitude. And this, look, this solar and the wind potential remain the same because of the geographical location, the one I showed you, that it's surrounded by any time the wind blows. So it may be in summer very hot, but when you go out, it's affordable, right? So then, and this plot also shows that, the solar is this, and the wind is here, green color, is also the same for all these 20 towns or cities. So constant. So that's why Saudi Arabia is in the very nice location in harvesting solar and wind both. Here I have arranged in terms of from the east to the west, approaching the green edge, descending latitude. So this is from Shaiba, then Al Bata, right? So then once again, the solar and the wind potential is showing same pattern, same, not up and down. That means that it for all throughout the country, oh, more or less similar conditions. Just and the location of Saudi Arabia is such that uh, if you see at the landscape, and so there is a very little, like absorbing power for, even if it rains, the soil has not got that spongy capacity to keep the water in, right? So, but the solar and the wind is available throughout. So I believe that Saudi Arabia is in the location where it can be becoming a hub of solar and wind, primarily for its use. I'm not thinking too much into share, into exporting this energy, of course, for benefits of others, but there's too much tendency of making like a market to be an export or junction point for exporting to the other countries associated with other things also. Correct? So now they are, this is because of my that Muhammad Yahya Fakihi, that look, these are the projects now coming soon, and these are the one which have been shortlisted like this. So the huge investment is coming into Jeddah by, they call it IPP, Independent Power Producer, 300 megawatt, and Rabiq, 300 megawatt, and Horayat, this is in the north, 200 megawatt. So look, these people are already shortlisted. And similarly, Madina Munawara, this is category A, 50 megawatt, and Rafha, 20 megawatt. Category A bidders, and this is category B bidders. So I thank you very much for your, arranging this workshop. And also I would like to use this opportunity that day before yesterday, it came into the media that Elon Musk and the Musk Foundation has recently announced $100 million in the history of computation of this carbon removal and for projects. And then for this, the applications will be announced in April for submission to this grant. So if some institutions, particularly Anandya and also SAR, and also Dr. Muhammad Tariq Khan, and we can think of coordinating with each other to make submission to this grant, which is mainly related to carbon removal. As I said in the beginning, any burning thing is now being discouraged. So it will be replaced by what? By distributed generation. But distributed generation, the thinking of generation is too much megawatt level is also okay. But how to generate for a house, how to generate for a mosque, for a masjid, for a college, for a hospital. This will be also, and let me show you some from Indian. This has come up in the one of the magazine. A whole thing projects about India. Now look, they are also working on such kind of generation. So if this kind, and then for such kind of generation from a small village or a small town, and then connected with the local, just a house great like this. So the 230 volts is available AC outside, but the local, the supply is being made from the solar panel, like this. So, and then this will be a very, and similarly this, the coming energy, the network shift is this, that we have distributed generation with battery integration. This article has appeared by Isa Bata Sahib and Khalid Al Alo Haibi from basically from Medina University, but he is working for as a postdoc in one of the southern state university in the US. So this something will be coming, and that something will be encouraging more generation locally and producing, the power at the spot where it is needed. So at the end, I think Yahya Mahaha Al Fakihi, he is IIM graduate and now working with the national energy, the renewable energy programs of Saudi Arabia. And also, I think Sultan Al Harbi, who is the postgraduate student of Qasim University, and I'm not working with Qasim, I'm in the Qasim state, I'm in a college, but he came and met with me, and I asked him, how did you know about me? I said, somebody told me that I should see you. So then the data collection is by this. And I thank the SARC office of Islamabad. Thank you very much. If there's any question, I welcome it.
Thank you so much, sir. There are a few questions for you. So one of the question is like, how is Saudi Arabia, how they are moving towards this renewable energy, given that it's a fossil fuel economy and they are heavily dependent on it. Not only the electricity sector, but all other sectors are also dependent upon these fossil fuels. So how they are moving towards renewables, sir?
Yeah, I say this based on my own experience. When after doing my PhD, I returned from Glasgow on the way to Islamabad and went for Umrah. At that time, we had to stay for 1.5 hours plus at the airport because of the passport and things. Now this time I came, the Saudi Arabia is digitized so much that almost the health system, the education system is on the digital, and the agriculture is coming. Now, coming back to your question. So, Saudi Arabia also, before anything you were going to buy in the market was particularly vegetables and fruit used to be exported, and chicken, poultry. Now, no more. You buy these things, fruits, vegetables, and chicken. There is a form here, al-wataniya. And al-wataniya, according to one guy who met with me, is employing 7,000 employees, and they are high-tech people. Means this, and then the whole chicken. Now, before there was a question of halal, haram. Saudi Arabia is importing from which one country it's halal or haram. No, no, no. I think you can buy local chicken, and it's more tasty. You can buy vegetables, like locally produced. The agriculture sector is focused. No more a country of those days. No, is now, I don't know, Saudi Arabia maybe not very much, could be focusing. I don't have any data on it, on exporting these vegetables. But if these vegetables are exported, then I believe that they will be the most organic vegetables anywhere around the world. But the thing is this, when it's associated with exporting things, then that organic element get lost like this. So they are also thinking about going away from fossil fuel, means not burning anymore. They are encouraging people, giving incentives to people that you install this on your rooftop, and then you will be saving some units, and as a result we give you some incentive by reducing your tariffs like this. So this process, and this is highly associated with the digital thing, means there is nobody who is coming to the door to read your meter. It's already connected. Your meter is read automatically. So the IC technology is coming almost into the places where there are more consumers or customers, like education, like health, like, of course, electricity supply. So I believe it's going away from fossil fuel slowly.
Right, sir. Sir, this is like a question which we can generalize to the Gulf region and Saudi Arabia, that their grid or the power system that was developed with the thermal generation unit, keeping them in mind for generation. So there was no concept of this variability which comes through the renewables. So how, like, of course, we talk with renewables, we always talk about grid stability that generates from this, these uncertainties that we talk about throughout this webinar. But how the current Saudi grid system or the other small Gulf countries which are there, how they are dealing with these uncertainties, though we are going towards this carbon-free and organic system, but how they are dealing with these uncertainties?
Dr. Tanveer Tariq, maybe I did not understand, or maybe I'm not very much qualified to comment on your question, but I have understood it like this, that you say that there is a lot of uncertainty and intermittent behavior in the renewable. Is that correct? And you say that how to deal with that, how they will
Yes.
be dealing with that. Is that so?
Yes.
As I've shown you the data, in the case of Saudi Arabia, country-wise, region-wise, town-wise, there is not much uncertainty. Means like, there was a smooth curve, region-wise, town-wise. But of course, sorry, not time-wise, region-wise. But time of the day, there is uncertainty. But the wind is continuously blowing. The wind has not intermittent behavior. No, the solar is there. So that intermittent behavior of the solar can be addressed by the battery integration. And as I said, if the residential, like Anandya also mentioned that, I think maybe Muhammad Tariq Khan or Anandya mentioned that the residential is going to be picking up too much because of the lifestyle and because of the population. So if the residential is met from some incentive given to the customers and the consumers at the local level, and everybody, when is having his house at the rooftop, he should have some mechanism for water heater and some mechanism for local generation. I believe that there will be very minimum need of some transmission lines, running over miles and kilometers, and with a line, with a this lot of space taken, then will not be needed. If people stress on this, how to generate locally from the rooftop like this. So the intermittent, the randomness of the solar, I think not that much. Sorry, the wind, but the solar can be met by some storage mechanism in the case of DC.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you.
Okay, sure.
So
Thank you
nice
very
of
much.
you. Thanks for
Thanks
the
a
nice presentation and your
Yeah,
time,
thank
sir.
you very much. Thank you very much. Okay.
Dear participants, I would like to thank all the presenters for sharing their knowledge and taking us through the details, and for their excellent response to the queries raised by the participants. We came across many interesting and useful information through their presentations. I believe many good experiences have been shared and good lessons learned. I would like to pay my deep respect to all the participants for your enthusiasm and positive participation in this webinar. Finally, I would like to thank our own staff for organizing this event and ensuring it ran so smoothly. I would like to close my remarks and officially announce the end of the webinar, wishing the future prosperity of South Asian nations. Thank you for your attention. May God bless you all. Thank you.